By doing that, for example, I keep everything centralized. I keep my costs down. I keep my scalability up.
This is Brendan Gillen from Fight Gear Direct.
This is Andrew Chernlin with Chernlin Products.
This is Dan Kaplan of the Game Steward.
And you're listening to
the
E-Comm Show.
Welcome to the E-Comm Show, presented by BlueTuskr, the #1 place to hear the inside scoop from other e-commerce experts, where they share their secrets on how they scaled their business and are now living the dream. Now, here is your host, Andrew Math.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the E-Comm Show. I am your host, Andrew Math, and today I have Dan Kaplan of the Game Steward here with me. Dan, ready for a good show?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Looking forward.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this episode, and I'm learning that this is a really bad habit of mine where I start an episode and I go, I'm so excited about this one for this reason, but that's why I did the show, right? So your business is incredibly interesting to me because of just the entire approach, and I don't want to ruin the fun, so I'll let you start off. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview about the Game Steward, and we'll go from there.
Well, sure. So we are essentially a board game company. We sell board games. We're a merchant that deals in them. But we're really quite different than most other ones. And I know people say it, but basically what we do is we sell board games that no one else sells. Essentially, games that are not in distribution, at least not in the United States. So we'll go directly, contracting to literally hundreds, at this point, thousands of different board game publishers to find their prototypes in games that are limited edition and Kickstarter, for example, before they've been published, like sometimes years before they're published. Contract with them, give them seed money so they can make more games and thus get better, cost per unit out of their production, and essentially then put them out for sale on our store. And so about 99% of what we sell is not available anywhere else.
So you're kind of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like a Kickstarter for board games.
Well, I mean, we're like an aftermarket for Kickstarter, if you want to call it that. A Kickstarter, right, is a crowdfunding site where everyone goes in, they put their money in, and they're not guaranteed to get anything back. You back the Kickstarter, and if the Kickstarter fails, then you're out of that money. Kickstarter does one nice thing that Indiegogo doesn't do, which is on Kickstarter, if the thing doesn't fund, you get your money back at that point. But if it funds and then they go belly up, you're out. There's actually no real transaction. With us, for example, we actually bond those. So basically with us, if you buy the Kickstarter from us, we're selling you that pre-order. And if it goes belly up 18 months in, you get a full refund from us. There's no risk. So we are essentially an aftermarket for Kickstarter. We're not like a crowdfunding site, though we do basically give seed money to companies a lot of times. If they're very large, we may have terms where we don't pay until it arrives. But some of the smaller ones actually need the money up front to increase their orders when they're like doing the build in China, for example. So those, for example, will often put all the money up front, sometimes like 2 or 3 years in advance. Although more typically it's a year to 18 months.
So you also would most likely, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, have no inventory, no product of your own. You're helping other sellers and other businesses sell their product, correct?
Well, I guess you could put it that way. These guys are publishers. So their main goal, right, is to design the best board game in the world. Their main goal is not to sell it. Some of them do. It is actually more common now, especially post-pandemic, where they'll open up their own store and they'll have their own stand, although not all of them do that still. And back in the day, it was really unusual. Like before the pandemic, a lot of people, only if they have excess inventory, would they bother opening a store. If they're going to meet all their Kickstarters or limited edition and they're going to go to distribution, perhaps, they would just simply sell what they had. And then they might have a remainder and they have to figure out a way to get rid of that, liquidate it, right? Now you see a lot more where publishers will, after their Kickstarter, open their own like Shopify shop, for example, which is relatively easy to do, where they can sell just their products. So are they our products? I consider every one of them to be our children, our babies. But and we do a lot of individual work with every one of them. I mean, custom contracting is not simple. There's a reason why people go to distributors, right? Because it basically makes it all the same. You have the same contract. You can buy from multiple publishers at once. You get all in one pallet, right? For us, everything's individual. So it is true that we do not make the board game. Although we are talking now about, there's a couple of titles, I won't name them, we would love to see them back in print. So we're actually looking at maybe doing Kickstarter ourselves to do a couple of titles that we would love to see back in print that have been out of print for like over 5 years.
It's absolutely genius. So I know you started this with your partner, Michael, correct?
Yeah, Michael Piazzik.
How did you come up with this idea? Like, this is amazing. Like, my head's turning. Like, how many other industries could you do this for? Like, this is genius. What was the backstory?
And I pronounce his name again because he now pronounces the Hungarian way, Michael Piasek as well. So Michael actually came up with the idea. I give him full credit. He was doing this on his own as a hobby. He was a big Kickstarter board game backer, and he also loved limited editions. And he started buying, as people will, a couple extra copies and then selling them. And then, he moved to the East Coast. His wife got a new position, so he had to give up his job. And he started doing it a little bit like as a side gig as he looked for other things. And then in 2016, we spoke and decided to actually go for it, just both of us full time. And so that was a really big sea change, right? We joined GAMA, the Game Manufacturers Association. We came up with our site online. We started to buy much more massive amounts of inventory, put a lot more capital into it. And so basically it evolved from that basement gig, where when we first started off, for a while, we were in his basement. Then we were in my garage. And now we own like an 8,000 foot square warehouse in Virginia where we have 5 employees working full time.
That's amazing. So did you bootstrap it? Did you take on any investment, any debt? Like, what was that beginning stage like of funding it to get it where it is now?
We basically did bootstrap it. Essentially, one of the things I brought to the table was I had some capital. So basically, I angel invested in the company. And, to this day, Mike and I both do put capital into the company on a regular basis because we'll do large amounts of buys and then it'll sell for a long time and then, for cash flow. But we've never taken on any investors besides the 2 of us.
I love hearing that. I'm not a big fan of taking on investment unless there's some reason where you need to get to market before someone else, then okay, I guess. But it's always really cool to hear the story of someone who bootstrapped it just because it lets everyone know like it is absolutely possible and it can be done. You just got to be patient. It takes a little longer, but that's how the game works. So I try not to get too deep into specific numbers because I know a lot of sellers aren't fans of sharing that kind of stuff. I know you broke 7 figures. Did you break 8 yet?
No, we have not broken 8 figures yet.
So what do you think?
We are. I'm sorry.
What do you think is? Well, actually, here let's backtrack first. What do you think was the biggest thing that helped you break 7?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. What helped us break 7? Well, we kind of went at this a little bit. We call them lateral strategies. So we typically don't try and hit our problems head on the way that we think a lot of other folks are, if only because it tends to be the most expensive way and people set up a lot of hurdles, a lot of competition. So what I would offer there is that what we did was we looked at the people who are the core board game players, early adopters, and we market targeted those early adopters, knowing that they would play these board games with their friends. And they were our core audience. And so flipping them to the second stage, which was once they had bought our games for over a year, had given us lots of great ratings, and essentially had told their friends about us, we began to see the second stage, where the people who were not necessarily like your alpha gamer, who wouldn't buy necessarily that $1,000 board game themselves all the time, but we do sell a $1,000 board game because we sell like limited editions with all the extras. So if you want the board game that has all of the extra expansions or like the metal coins and the metal figures, we do carry those. Like we'll buy variations on the game, but I digress. So we got those core gamers in, then their friends started to come. And as we moved through them to the next tier, the friends of the friends, I think that's where we broke 7 figures. And we still see those seasonal shifts in our core gamers. Like the original core audience tends to buy a lot in March, as opposed to, let's say, December. But yet the seasonal gamers, the ones I would offer the third tier is kind of rough, but let's call it the third level of gaming. Yeah. They tend to be much more seasonal shoppers. So that's where we start to see the expansion from Black Friday into December, right through January. And we still see that curve in March, but now it's sort of underwater, right? It's like a tidal wave that doesn't really break the surface of the water. You can't see it, right? So we still see those guys come in, But now our overall shoppers that season are so high that it's still in effect, but it's under the top of the roll.
So interesting. What makes your peak in March? That seems I'm not even really sure I understand why March.
It's been true for years. Like we've been doing this, since 2016, like with Shopify, for example, and online. And March is very steady that way. And as to why it was that March is the biggest, I've heard a number of theories. I haven't bought into any of them. I've heard some people say, well, that's when people get their tax returns back, so they have all this extra cash. I've heard, a number of different theories. It may also be the seasonal cycle with supply from China as normally works. Because what you'll see a lot of times is that people will promise their games in by Christmas. They'll miss that date. Mm-hmm. Then you have Chinese New Year, which is in late February. Nothing's going to ship then. And so a lot of stuff comes in like right after the Chinese New Year because everything gets in the boats and they come across, at least typically. Now we have these other issues with the pandemic. But we get a lot of inventory in. So that also might explain why March was. Again, though, I've crunched the numbers and I have not seen a really convincing argument.
So, of course, the elephant in everyone's room right now, pandemic. So how did that affect your business? I'm going to go out on an assumption and assume you did pretty well considering everyone's stuck at home. Like the best thing to do is play a board game, but I may be wrong. So how did that go?
Well, we made a lot of friends at Gamma. And, they've told us that the board game cycle is actually cyclical. So like you just said, when there's problems in the economy, board games tend to sell better. And so, we did fairly well. I mean, we had March of 2020 was actually an inverse, right? That was the first year where sales went down, but that was when the story was breaking right on the pandemic.
Yeah.
So we had that downturn. But after that point, when people got over the shock of it and they were home and they wanted to play board games, our business started to pick up. I would offer it has followed the same seasonal shifts that otherwise it has. It's interesting whether or not we would have hit the same numbers if it hadn't been for the pandemic. I have to say that aside from the dip in March that we saw because of the scare and that people were concerned about it, I think we've probably grown at least as fast as we would have anyway, and may have grown faster. It's hard to say.
Wow, interesting. So with that, obviously because of it, currently there's a ton of supply chain issues and shipping is $1 billion and everyone's kind of still having issues, especially in our industry. How's it going with you guys? What kind of issues are you dealing with right now?
Well, we are used to thousands of separate contracts for our board games. We don't work with distributors, right? Or we do a bit, but it's not we're against distributors. I mean, they obviously have a great role in the industry and they're very important. The thing about it is, though, because we do private contracts and because we also do a ton of pre-orders, sometimes our customers know that their limited edition board game or Kickstarter is not going to come in for 24 months. So our customers are, sort of dipped in the river Styx. They're made of steel. They don't flinch. Certainly the core board gamers when it comes to these long-term things. Also, they know with us that these games are sold out or long sold out. And so what we do is we essentially take their pre-order, and even though the price of the game may go up before it reaches market, we don't do any funny business. Like when you buy from us, you have bought the game. You've reserved that price. We're going to keep it for you no matter what. So I think a lot of them sit and they're like ready to wait it out. I've got some suppliers who should have delivered, in February who still haven't delivered. It's kind of rare, but it's happened. And some of these are big games. And I will see amongst some people who are relatively new customers who aren't used to the fluctuations, like with Kickstarters, for example, and the delays. And, some of them are upset. We'll explain the situation. A lot of them, I would offer probably 75%. We'll be like, oh, that's great. Appreciate you letting us know. We're going to sit on it and we'll wait. The other part of what I would offer is that for us, actually, it's been kind of nice because we normally get this huge crush on certain months of deliveries. And actually, because of the delays, it's actually spread it out for us. So instead of getting a tidal wave in 1 month, we've actually seen this sort of nice distribution over several months. Now, as we go into next year, and I'll tell you, I'm hearing from publishers, right? The cost of a shipping container has gone up like 20 times.
Yeah.
So, they're struggling. And we've had a few instances where we worked with them and said, we understand your game has gone up in cost. Tell us what we need to do. We'll, for more games that we sell, we're going to add a little bit to that. We'll offset some of that cost. But for the most part, people have held steady. So for us so far, knock on wood, we're doing well. We're seeing the inventory come in. And because of our strange nature of not really being one of these groups that like just buys from a distributor, and that distributor's late, everything's late, we're dealing with all these individuals and they all come in at different times. So for us, it's something comes in every day of the week.
So with all of those different issues that obviously plenty of hurdles that you just listed, and obviously currently for this year, how are you kind of preparing for Q4? How does that work for you guys?
Well, we've looked at it. I mean, one of the things we try and do is we try and make sure we bought enough, right? That's always a thing. So we are putting down a lot of money, laying down a lot more inventory, knowing that probably when we go into this next cycle, we're going to grow as much as we did last fourth quarter. And so also trying to put out and get as many things we can landed for a Black Friday sale. So we do one sale a year. It's a Black Friday sale, only on in-stock items. And that's usually a monster. So everything that we've collected over the course of the year, some of it we've held back. What happens is we'll make an order, but because we're limited edition, you can't get more. We'll always over order so that if there's a few dented copies, right, we'll have pristine copies for our customers. We'll set those dented ones aside. Then on Black Friday, we put all these up for sale. We know if they're dented or not. Usually the dings are so small, people don't even notice them. We notice them. And so our Black Friday turns into this gigantic monster. So one of the things we try and do is make sure we have enough landed in-stock inventory to make sure that we can feed that furnace for the Black Friday sale. That Black Friday sale really for us also, it trains Google algorithms, for example, to understand who our customers are. And since we're very niche, right? We're a very fine segment of even, think about gaming, right? You got gaming all kinds. You got a big part of that's computer game, right? And then there's a small subsection of that that's board games, right? And then there's a smaller section of that where you overlap, let's say, with Kickstarter's limited editions and so on. So you get to smaller and smaller circles. So we are very niche. And so one of the things that the Black Friday sale does for us, and we always prepare for, and one of the reasons we feed it so well, is that Google sees all the people who come to our shop and they begin to better profile exactly who our customers are. And that makes all of our advertising campaigns that much more accurate, going right into the Christmas season when you want it. So we see a much better ROAS going all the way through, let's say, February or March, because of that training up of the algorithms using the Black Friday sale, for example. So when you think about what I'm going to do fourth quarter, that's a big one, right? The second part of it is making sure I have enough inventory in place, try and land as much as I can so it'll be available for people for Christmas, for example. And then, of course, just keeping track of all the titles. We carry actively probably no more than 300 to 450 titles at a time. Although we have thousands of items that we have back as limited edition, right? We don't have more. We're unlike other stores, right? We can't buy and do a scale. So it's not like we buy and then say, oh, we'll keep selling it and keep selling it and keep advertising and build that market. Basically, ours disappear and then it's over. Sometimes we get a second swipe at it because the publisher says, hey, I've got these extra 1,000 copies. Do you want them? Absolutely. We'll take everything off your hands. We'll be happy to. We've had a few instances like that where we get second and third tries at the game. But normally, right, it's gone. So we have to move on. And so what we're trying to do right now is just make sure that for the fourth quarter, we land the inventory, get the pre-orders in. We're interested, obviously, we're reading the news. We're watching what's happening with COVID. And, looking for any curveballs.
Yeah. How do these publishers find you?
Well, we tend to find them. Some do find us. We have metrics that we actually started. We talked before the interview, right? I was an enterprise architect for a long time. So doing metric-based work is basically how I do everything. And so we collect metrics on games. And I've been working tirelessly to get better and better information, data in from various websites to put together and actually get the scoop on what is the zeitgeist say about a certain game, right? It may not be maybe a first-time publisher, but you can take a look at it. You can see what the interest is going to be in 6 to 12 months. And that's really my job, or our job, is to sort of prognosticate, like what will be popular in a year or 2 years from now, right? And put that together. And so what we do is we find those metrics. Once we do, we approach the game publisher. A lot of times, too, we'll simply reach out to them on Game Found or Kickstarter, make contact, say, hey, we are this large buyer. We notice that you're selling, you don't have, let's say, necessarily a retailer offering. Can we talk to you about that? Like, what would you say if we bought like 10,000 units from you? How will that work? What if we bought a shipping container's worth? How many fit in one shipping container? Does that make it easier for you? And look for those places where everybody can give. I'll also offer that my business partner, Michael, has started with a friend of ours from Great Britain, a Facebook group for retailers to fund Kickstarters. So we're also working really hard to bring our other board game stores, and help bring information to them and provide a venue where if you have a Kickstarter or a limited edition board game, you go on there and just say, hey, here's my offering. I have this retailer, level pricing. I mentioned retailer offering or retailer buys or contracts, and hopefully making that connection a little bit better because, when we started, it was very rough, right? It's Kickstarter board games and limited edition board games outside of distributors. It was almost unheard of to really carry them in a large fashion. A lot of brick and mortar stores would get orders from their customers. Like a customer might come in and say, hey, Andrew, can you get me this one game? And they would order a copy of it and get it for their loyal customer. But the whole idea of being a specialty store that, like, I think probably 90% of our offerings are Kickstarter. I think the other 10% are limited edition or not available in the US and in distribution. And we are the first, and basically we have the deepest and broadest catalog of games in this branch. And that is something that I don't think the world had seen before. Really, I think that's one thing that really differentiates us. But forgive me, I think I digress on you.
That was great. You could take the show.
Careful, I'll just keep going. You don't want me to do that.
You mentioned the Facebook group. It actually reminded me because I did want to ask you when we were talking about the Q4 stuff, because you have the perfect audience for kind of that community building, because talk about like a tight-knit group that probably all have opinions about certain things, which means you can keep conversations going, all that stuff. So what does your marketing strategy look like? Do you have a Facebook group also for your actual customers that are buying these games, and like what's your whole strategy like?
Oh, well, I'll mention too that with the retailer Kickstarter group, that I should also mention that our friend Dave from Manchester, England, with Fanboy 3, one of the biggest board game retailers in Great Britain, I'll co-founder that group with Michael. So I give them full credit for doing that, for example. For us individually, our media strategy, again, we try to be lateral. So we've done some strange things. But in terms of Facebook groups, it's pretty ordinary. We have basically a Facebook business page. We have a Facebook group where people can join. It's a private group. What we do tend to do is put out announcements for remainders that we get that are hard to find. We'll put them out there first, right? So our loyal customers who have subscribed to that can get those first. We've also developed a system on our site now where if a game is sold out, you can sign up for it. And basically, if you are a previous customer of ours, you'll get 6 hours warning before non-customer if we get those games back in stock for you. So we try to do things for our customers and our repeat customers, to let them get a slight edge on those things. And it also brings value to joining the Facebook group.
Yeah.
With Facebook as well, for example, in media, it's not really about organizing so much, but advertising. We've done Facebook campaigns, right, where we make sure that our groups are covered. And that essentially people, I think this is a big vending machine as opposed to sales. The difference being is that, when you want those corn chips, right, you go to the vending machine and you pick the corn chips you want. If you don't want to hear from the corn chip vending machine, you won't. And that's with us with sales. Like, we're a giant vending machine. We put our stuff out in Google Shopping. We put our stuff out on Facebook. And essentially, if you are interested in a certain kind of chips, we're the vending machine. You can come and find it from us. We'll always be there. And hopefully, any title that you're looking for, we can give it to you. In terms of organizing, though, and in terms of the grassroots of it, I will say this. Our brick and mortar brothers and sisters really do so much with that. We are trying to develop our own brick and mortar front end to our warehouse, for example. But board game companies, they provide a play space and they really build this. So, when you talk about like a Facebook group, for example, like with retailers who back Kickstarters, that's something that we've contributed on, and most of my business partners. But really, it's those board game stores, and unfortunately not us at this point. They provide that play space. They provide a place where people can tactily touch the games and look at them, feel the weight, for example. And they provide really a safe environment for people who share that interest. If you talk about third spaces, board game companies and board game merchants have been doing that for decades. My best friend Mike, who is my business partner, we met in high school at a little board game store in Alexandria, Virginia called The Little Soldier, which no longer exists. And it's exactly that third space in the 1980s, believe it or not, that, brought us together. And a lot of my close friends, in fact, a few of them who work in our warehouse, we met through gaming, and we've known for decades. So I'm sorry, you mentioned about, Facebook and groups. I sort of took it into third space, which is really, are you familiar with that? Is that a term that everybody knows? Third space?
No, that one I was a little lost about. I was going to come back to it. What is a third space?
Yeah, I apologize for that, Andrew. So third space is a phrase that's used in modern merchandising, I would offer, and in modern mall space. And I remember I was talking on a local talk show here, a radio show that we have for NPR about this as well, because people will argue about developing a space commercially, or do we make it a park, right? And we basically ban commercial spaces from it. And I called in, I was like, well, guys, what you're talking about is so 20 years ago. Because the way that really commercial spaces work today, the ones that really, really work, and obviously there's many ways to slice this up, is they provide like a safe space. You think about it like your high-end bookstore, for example, where they have chairs where you can sit and read the books, right? They also may have like a coffee shop attached to them. They're providing a space where you can not only get the merchandise, but you can actually enjoy your time in that space. And so those are called third spaces, at least by certain groups of people. And board game stores, for example, have been doing that for decades, right? Providing that third space. I've seen interesting thing when I was a kid, like Dungeons and Dragons, for example, was frowned upon. They were like, oh, it's satanic worship. There was at least a few people were. And now I see that parents are driving their kids in droves to board game stores, right, to play Dungeons and Dragons because they're actually talking face to face with other people instead of on devices. So those third spaces are kind of like community space. And the way that they're, paid for basically is that you are a patron or a merchant. You shop at that store. Sometimes there's a small nominal fee, right? People will maybe charge a quarter for sodas or charge a little bit of time for a table space if it's very, very active. But for the most part, those third spaces are designed to bring you in. And game stores have provided gaming tables for decades. And like I said, bookstores, board game stores, maybe some high-end coffee shops perhaps did this originally. But they provide those places where you can set up your laptop if you want to and you can work if you want. That's a third space for you.
I mean, that's now my marketing brain is running, so forgive me. I mean, so when I was a kid, I'll admit it, I was big into Pokemon and I would go and like do things, and it was relatively similar to what you're talking about. So now I'm thinking, do you host events? Do you and if you're not doing this, I suggest you do it because I just had this idea and it sounds great in my head, and correct me if I'm wrong. But you could take your data out of Shopify or Google Analytics or wherever you want, figure out where some of your top customers are in 3 or 4 cities and do like a tournament and actually host like an event. Have you guys ever thought of doing something along those lines? Because I know that game stores are not common in most cities. So you could actually kind of have like a pop-up shop. Have you guys ever looked into doing something like that?
Well, we could. I mean, so let me explain a little bit. Like my friend Dave, who owns Fanboy 3 in Manchester, England. He is a huge Magic the Gathering host. He also does, every collectible card game you can think of, right? He hosts those events. And he's been doing it for years. And he has staff dedicated to that purpose. And I would offer that, from my knowledge of other board game stores, I think we may be the only ones who don't do that. So we don't sell collectible card games. I'll just put that out there. We specialize, right, in these limited edition board games. So we don't have Magic the Gathering. We don't have Pokemon. We don't carry any of those. So for us, it would be a bit of a stretch. But I take your point, and I'd offer that your other more typical board games, we are the exception. Every other board game I know, actually, our board game store, kind of has been making its margin over the years by selling Magic the Gathering, right, and doing the events that you're talking about, that crowd-based service that essentially brings in customers and provides additional revenue stream, right? It makes them familiar with the store. It provides them a play space. They get familiar with it. Also, there's a certain amount of, profit to be made in hosting those events, although I'm not sure exactly the margin. But to be honest with you, that's one of the things that we don't do collectible cards. Maybe if there was a board game tournament, we could do something along those lines. But we are working though, Andrew, on providing a space where our warehouse is. So basically that people can come to our site and visit us and pick things up directly from us. Because today we're really online only.
Mhm.
Unlike, like I said, like Fanboy 3 in Manchester, if you want a delightful place to play, Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or have a tournament, he's got a whole basement dedicated to that with this advanced air conditioning system to keep the air fresh, like hundreds of chairs and tables and trained staff who do nothing. Oh, well, I shouldn't say nothing else, but who have spent years or if not decades running these events. So they really know how to do it. But I agree with you. It is a good way to expand your business.
Yeah. Where'd you say your warehouse was based out of?
Our warehouse now is in Vinton, Virginia, which is
Vinton,
Southwest
Virginia.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
I'm sorry?
That your space coming soon, Vinton, Virginia.
There
Get
you
ready
go.
for it.
Well,
What is that in the works? Is that something you guys are?
Well, okay, so to tell you too, in our same town in Vinton, Virginia, right next door, is the largest seller of Magic the Gathering cards, I think, in the world, possibly in the country, but I think it's in the world.
Wow.
I know this too because several of their employees have left there to come work for us. So it's slightly different.
Nice.
So yeah, we are a different kind of board game store, and I absolutely agree with you on the community service and what brick and mortars do. At this point, unfortunately, I think that if we went into Magic the Gathering, we might be slightly eclipsed, but there might be other avenues.
Oh yeah.
Also, they tend not to be limited edition, right? I mean, there is this idea that there's limited quantities, right? But it's not exactly the same thing. When we say limited edition, what we mean is that there's like a publication window and then a end. Although now that you mention it, Andrew, that does sound like Magic the Gathering, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if you had maybe a game that everyone wanted to play, but there was obviously very limited amounts, and hence it's a limited edition, you could almost take that, like several of those games, and like put them on tour and just have a day where someone can come and play and sit and, have a coffee, enjoy a drink or something, and play a game with some friends, and then you take it back and it goes back on the road.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Might be interesting.
Sorry,
it's just going in my head.
And we do participate a little bit. Like we'll have European board game publishers who don't have a space in the United States. So we do work with them a bit on that. Like they'll really do the demoing. One of the things will happen is they'll deliver to us and we'll hold for them, for example, and that sort of thing. So we do a cooperative relationship. But it's definitely a place where we could expand. It absolutely is.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, about what helped you break 7 figures. What is it you think is going to help you break 8 figures?
Well, I think that as word of mouth spreads, that, this sort of, if you ever read The Tipping Point, for example, it's this idea that you keep expanding on that. And what we try to do is we're trying to provide, I should say, the best customer service available. So one of the things we've seen was there's a few copycat stores now have opened up. Some of them former customers of ours. Some of them are homages where they're like, oh, we love the Game Steward and we're gonna like open up our own little thing and it supports their game. Others who are a little more abrasive and have, actually come after us a little bit, which is it's interesting. The people who have done that, we found out later, that have done that with everyone. So what we're seeing really is that providing just top-notch service, security, trustworthiness, and quality, right? And making sure that all our customers are taken care of. We keep hiring, new personnel to make sure we can answer the phones, reply to all the emails in a prompt fashion. And we're also working on new ways in which to update our customers. Like working on, instead of just saying a newsletter, what new games we have, we're working on a newsletter that will include things like, hey, what is the status of all your current orders? And tailored information about what it is that you're about in each one of those. So it's to keep people up to date, especially if you're going to be waiting 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, is your game being published in China? Has it found a shipping container yet? Is it on the boat coming back? Is it in distribution with the fulfillment agent that the publisher chose? Has it arrived at the Game Steward? That sort of thing.
Okay.
But maybe that doesn't answer your question exactly. I would offer that if we keep doing this and we keep expanding our base the way we have, and more people tell their friends this is the right way to go, I just feel like there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah. How big is your market? Like, where's your cap?
That's a great question. We heard from many people before we started that our business was impossible. In fact, I attended a lecture given by a board game retailer who's had years of experience, who I deeply respect. Great guy. And he, in the lecture, actually stated, this is when we were just getting started, how our model we'd already started was completely impossible, would never work. Since then, he knows us. And it's like, okay, all right, it can work, but it's one of those funny things. We have to work really hard in some ways that board game stores never do, right? For all those individual contracts, for example, and all those separate fulfillments and everything. It's a lot more tracking. It has its advantages, like in this environment, we're used to some chaos, right? So pandemics don't really rock us very much because basically we're used to having to track everything ourselves and watch it. So if I had to nail the future, I think that basically are providing this service, especially to people who aren't near like a game store that can provide it, and who have seen a Kickstarter, for example, and can't get it. If you're in Topeka, Kansas, and you don't have really a retailer who will provide this for you, that market, I mean, it's almost infinite. And the way it can be infinite is that basically you get past, or I shouldn't say past, but you obviously inclusive of the core gamers, right? Who are really heavy gamers, who understand who you are and that how rare the thing is. Then you get to their friends and the friends of their friends. And they want to get this item. They've heard about this item. They Google it, right? So that's why I say we're the vending machine. And now they found us. So the only questions really left for them are, can I trust these guys, right? Or I'm going to give them my money for 12 to 15 months, or maybe just 2 or 3 months. Can I do that? And so I would offer that, where does that market end? I'm not sure. I mean, all right, traditionally, I'll say this. We see more in common between a German customer, a French customer, and a US customer than we see between 2 US gamers, if you just classify them as gamers in general. So when we do our algorithms, for example, Google, we're always looking at that very carefully and saying, hey, our customers out of Berlin, that is the profile, right? Don't split that traffic and come up with these different profiles for these other countries. No, for us, as a small company that's looking at a very specific segment, we want to pull those together to get the populations together, to get the algorithms right. Because without enough data, right, the algorithms won't work. So, and that's getting a little technical in there, and so basically when we look at that, we want to be able to globally provide for this market. So it's Topeka, Kansas, it's Wolfsburg, Germany, it's all those little towns. And honestly, we thought a long time ago that it was a lot smaller than it was. I don't think we really know how big it could be. But I would say ultimately, as the trust grows and the name brand grows, it could start to get into a significant margins into the game market, which is really not saying anything much. I'm not giving any specific numbers, I'm afraid, but I would offer that I don't see us needing to virtual our model for years to come. We've talked about it, but we'll see.
Yeah, it sounds like a great position to be in. You kind of touched on Google there, and you didn't want to get too deep, but actually, I love that. Let's touch there for a second. So you obviously you're global. You're doing Google across the board. You have products though that you're taking pre-orders for. You go in and out of stock for. Like you have issues there. So I would assume you're catering more to the search side and less on the shopping side. Am I correct? Or display?
That's actually just the opposite.
Really?
Yeah. So in Google, for example, we also do Microsoft ads. So
yeah. Good. Thank God. No one ever does those. They're so underrated.
Well, our feeling has been to be that vending machine. We want the vending machine to be in every corner of, we'll call it every cafeteria or office, anywhere, right? So we use a lot of the smaller search engines as well as Microsoft ads and Google ads being the biggest one. But I'll tell you this, because this is unusual. Like if you ask me how many active items I have in Google Merchant Center, what would you think that would be?
You said you usually have about 300 to 400 products on your site at a time, correct? Right. I'm going to guess if you're going in and out of stuff occasionally, I'm going to say less than 100.
So active items right now, I'm looking at my Google Merchant, is 163,004,435.
What? How does it?
Okay. So let me break it down.
Right.
Let me break it down for you. So we advertise in about 25 different countries, right? So those are all going to multiply the number of items because the way Google
Mhm.
Merchant works, more or less, it's segmented out by country. Okay, so I'll put that as a multiplier. So that's in that
Good point.
number to start with. Also, those are you can have all of your ads in English. Now we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we started broaching into ads into German and to French, and Spanish, Japanese. And then when you get down to it, we have this other thing, right? I told you before, I'm pretty technical. I was an enterprise architect for many years for a multi-billion-dollar firm. Certainly, of a division of a multi-billion-dollar firm. And I'll just go in there and say that what we did was we spoke with Google back in 2016 and 17, back when it was still in California, the support. And we got the ear, actually, of a lot of, like, I would call them old timers, people who were just down the hall from the programmers who were actually developing the software. And I say that because since they moved to offshore support in 2017, like the support people, God bless them, they don't know, they weren't trained as deeply, right, as Palo Alto.
Yeah.
And so we got the early benefit of that. And they told us what the rules are. And so basically we do it like this. And I would offer this to anybody who wants to advertise. Let's say you're selling, I don't know, let's say you're selling soap, okay? And let's say your soap is lemon scented. And let's say but it happens to be great at taking motor oil off. Are you going to run one ad that says, I have this lovely lemon scented soap? Or are you going to run two? One that says, I have this lovely lemon scented soap. And oh, by the way, here's a second ad. Got motor oil in your hands? This is the best scented remover of motor oil you're going to find.
Mhm.
And so that's literally one of the best gems I can give you, which is the way that you're supposed to use Google Ads. And a lot of people in the support group now don't even know this, is that when you have one product, you could have 70 different ads where you profile different kinds of shoppers. Are you trying to get motor oil off your hands? Or are you really loving lemon scent? Or something in between. Maybe there's 5 or 6 different ways you can sell that soap. So when we do board games, we have algorithms written that look at our various markets and break up the ads differently. And then we test them out. And what we do is let every ad run for like 6 months. And then if it does well, we leave it in play. But then our algorithms automatically look at the past history. And the ones that don't do well, they pull them out and we put new ones in. And so we're constantly rotating our ads. And basically with a single product, we may have, starting off, over 1,000 different variations of ads for it. We see which ones work. But by the time it comes to market, right, pretty much when things come to market, we're almost sold out. I mean, we sell out in pre-order. But by the time it does that, though, we'll be down to a few ads for that item that work really well. And so this is, for example, why we use Google Shopping. I also offer the Google Shopping. Your return on ad spend, ROS, I have found I can't get near it. I mean, you could try, search ads, you could try other things, but the fact that people are ready to buy when they go to Google Shopping, they've already gotten to the point where they're looking for it, they're serious, they want it. Remember I told you I'm a big vending machine, right? That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to chase you across the web all the time, although I'll do a little of that, to be honest with you. What I'll do is I will put out variations on all the kind of keywords you might be looking for and the various audience members you might be. And when you search for that game, you'll find, often for me, maybe 5 different variations. I may have the super bundle. I may have the singular supplement that has the one figure that you want. And I have all those out there. And I have many variations thereof. So you may refer to it as a tabletop game. You might have said a board game. You might have been looking for it 70 different ways. We put them out there and people find us. So when I said we're a vending machine, I really meant it. And I'm not only have one vending machine, I'm virtually like hundreds of vending machines with variations on naming my candy bars, right? So that if you're looking for that one name, there.
Yeah. I mean, it is so, and I assume you're the one running the Google ads based on the information you just gave me.
Oh, yeah. Because of my technical background.
Yeah.
Also, to tell you the truth, when Mike and I started, right, we didn't have a big budget. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to get in there. And the thing that, being a board gamer, for example, I looked at this. Now my game is the Game Steward. That's my game. And, finding out how to laterally strategize for advertising is something that I'm always listening for. So when I listen to those folks in Palo Alto talk to me about how you can do variations on ads, test it out, watch what worked, realize that I was incapable of guessing what is the best combination, what is the best way to sell this. Really, the acid test, right, is you do the experiment. You go out in the world and you let people choose for themselves and see what works.
Mhm.
Now, I've got a bonus here for me because I sell pre-orders. So I often have like just months and months and months to figure it out, right? And in fact, I'll try to put my ads out as early as possible, right, to see SEO and everything else. And then it may be several months, like I said, 6 months that I don't even start to pick up prune ads until 6 months have gone by, right? And that's also usually when we've gotten closer to delivery. So now the hardcore board gamer might know about a game 2 years in advance and put their money down. They're ready to go. They're like, I'm locked in, Dan. I want that game. Say, all right, Andrew, I got it. Throw it away. You're safe. You've got it. Check with me anytime. If you want to cancel your order anytime, full refund is no problem. We're just here to do that.
Yeah.
Then you get like the newer gamers, right? Who are friends of the friends of the friends. They're not used to doing that. So what'll happen is as it starts to come into or coming closer to stock, there'll be more blips on the media. That's when the ads will start to hit and so on. So one of the things to look at in your particular market is how long does that take? Now, for a lot of folks, it may be immediate, right? You may be wanting to have immediate impact on your ad the second you land it. Well, I would offer if you put out 10 variations on it and 2 work, well, now you have 2 working ads. That's great. And also you look at the trend. Look at what worked for your market. Why was it those 2 ads work now for your other product? What is it about those particular versions of the ads, the variations that worked so well? Now let me try to make sure I do those variations for all my other products. And maybe the ones that didn't work too. Make sure you tried them. See which ones. Because like, for example, for me, I've got people who buy my board games sometimes because they want to paint the meeples. They buy them, they're going to use them in D&D. So, people buy my games for all kinds of reasons. So sometimes noting that this comes with 500 individual medieval meeples, or I shouldn't say meeples, I said individual figures. Sorry, I said meeples, figures that are paintable or maybe come shadowcast or precast so you can paint them easily. That is one sector. It's one way to sell the thing. So, and I'll just say this too, another great tip for folks. Microsoft Ads has just added, or is just adding a beta feature now, where they've had it for a long time where they feed from Google, but now they're adding a feature where you can finally advertise in multiple markets with one feed from one Microsoft Ads account, which you could never do before. I have just signed up for the beta myself. I'm waiting any day now in the last 2 weeks to get into it. But basically what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to take that one feed and it'll convert now for the first time ever on Microsoft Ads, your currency. And thus you'll take one feed, let's say for the United States, and you can then take that and say, I want to advertise to New Zealand, Canada, Australia, Singapore, India, all the English-speaking countries. And basically at that point, they'll do the currency conversion for you for the first time. Now, Google's done it for a long time, but Microsoft, literally, it's a new beta. You have to call support. They have to nominate you to be part of the program. And now, like I said, I'm waiting. It should be any day now. Hopefully, I'll get into it, right? Now, so the other thing I'll say there is that the reason I have so many ads, right, is because I'm international. And I'd offer anyone who's in my situation, who's got a narrow market, I want to dominate the market worldwide. I want to reach every customer in every continent. So I've been advertising for a long time in Thailand, as well as Germany, right? I advertise all over the world. That's where my customers are. In fact, we did really well in Thailand. Actually, we had a great ROAS in Thailand for a very long time. And then it went down. And then I looked and I found a board game store owner in Bangkok specialized in Kickstarters, right? So he took my market in Thailand. So now they can buy it local. Well, I'm like, good for them, right? Because hey, I would too. If I was in Thailand, I'd buy from Bangkok before the US. But it's a growing market, and I would offer that if you're narrow, the thing you want to do is do what you do well, find all your variations, but also seriously, you've got to gear up to be international. I mean, there are so many extra scalability in there because especially with just English, and you can advertise in English, obviously in Germany and France as well now. And early in 2016, you couldn't actually. For a while there, they required you to advertise in local language, but now you can advertise in English. So those same ads with, let's say, those 10 variations that you've written, you could be running ads not just in the United States, but you can run them in Canada, you can run them in Great Britain, you can run them, and at least on Google, for example, even now you can run them all over Europe. And Microsoft, like I said, the new program, you can now run them at least with currency conversion automated by Microsoft for the first time. You'll be able to run them in all of those English-speaking countries. If you have a French feed, you do the same thing. You could do Quebecois, as well as France. It's not as many countries, obviously, but there's no problem with that. It's decent. And essentially, that's what we've been aiming to do. That's where our growth is, I think, too. In fact, this last year, I didn't mention this, but if I looked at it, we did see a decrease in sales somewhat in domestic seasonally, but it was more than made up for by our increasing sales internationally.
Yeah.
One other great hint I'll give to any Shopify store owner out there, it's the best secret I know. Actually, I told you a few of them. FIMS, Federal Express International Mail Service. Virtually no one's heard of them, and virtually no one supports them. But I'll say this for Shopify, ShipRush does. And what FIMS does is FIMS will actually allow you to get great rates internationally. And so if you're a small store, you can actually, even their basic rate is outstanding. And basically you get Federal Express, right? And they'll mail your stuff all over the planet. I mean, virtually. I mean, it's hard for you to find countries that don't cover. Mm-hmm. And the way they do it too is the more each batch you send out weighs, the lower your rate. So they don't even do it individually. Basically, they look at the weight of your overall, let's say, pallet or your bag. And I'll just say the starting rates are fantastic, and they just get better from there. And we found people really love them. I mean, FedEx is a good name. Some, I won't name them, shipping services will put surcharges in the back end. FedEx is not one of them, right? So if you have a customer and they pay for the shipping already, if you have a shipper who then charges them extra without letting you know they're going to do that, yeah. I won't name the service, but we had a lot of angry Canadian customers back in 2018. We quickly stopped that. Mm-hmm. But Federal Express and FIMS, and also a note for you, if you ask for it, you can't ask Federal Express for it because Federal Express and FIMS were never merged properly. FIMS is almost like its own company within Federal Express. You had to find Federal Express International Mail Service, literally that name. Because there's Federal Express International, entirely different deal. So if you're a small store and you do FIMS, and I'll tell you, it took me 2 years to find ShipRush. ShipRush is a small application that is a Shopify application. It's no longer on the Shopify store, though, by the way. Maybe they'll go back. But they do support Shopify. And they are one of the only ones who does FIMS. And they do a virtual application. So with a lot of other, I won't name them, applications that you do shipping with, they literally still have the old model where you have to install. So I'm like 500 miles, Andrew, from my warehouse. I mean, I see Mary, my director of warehouse, every once in a while, but I'm not. It's not enough that I can help her if she has an individual install. But the thing about ShipRush is it's just like Shopify. All you need is a web browser and log in. Once you do that, the entire application is open to you. So if Mary has a problem, I can log in as Mary or as myself, 500 miles away, and see exactly what she sees and fix it. I'll just tell you, as an enterprise architect formerly, one of the things I look for, right, is to keep my base of my products slim and agile. Which is to say things like not having individual installs on local PCs, for example. By doing that, for example, I keep everything centralized. I keep my costs down. I keep my scalability up, right? Because now, if I went to 50 employees, right, how many more installs do I have? 0, right? I basically, everything's browser-based. So by honing my application library, I can keep my whole organization agile from a technology standpoint. And easy to grow, right? Everything, and I would offer any business owner where they work, if they have that kind of foresight, it pays off. It takes a while, but it does pay off because when you actually start to grow, now you can grow more expediently with less overhead and more scalability, basically meaning that it will create a lot less effort to get much larger, right? And support more staff. But I digress.
Dan, you're like the king of so many things. Like Google, going global. Like we could sit here, we could do this all day. We might have to have you back on the show and just pick a topic and be like, all right, we're going global today. Let's do it. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. I obviously greatly appreciate having you on the show. This is that quintessential moment where I give you that opportunity to just kind of like let everyone know where they can find you and all that fun stuff.
Oh, sure. Well, I appreciate it, Andrew. And if you guys wanted to try individual ones, I'd be more happy to try and keep myself at fewer words. But basically, it's thegamesteward.com. You can also find us at gamesteward.com. www.thegamesteward.com. Basically, when you come to our website, you'll see Mike and my face on the front. You'll see our phone number in the upper right-hand corner. You can call us anytime. And, any questions you have, contact our customer support. You can also email me at dan@thegamesteward.com and Mike at michael@thegamesteward.com directly. We're a small business. We're always looking after our customers, and we want to help everybody. And if you're looking for a rare board game, we want to hear about it.
Amazing. Of course, Dan, appreciate having you on the show. And obviously, everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. Head over to ecommshow.com. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on any podcast platform that you want, really, or the YouTube channel. And of course, keep selling and good luck out there. We will see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the E-Comm Show. Head over to ecommshow.com to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or on the BlueTuskr YouTube channel. The E-Comm Show is brought to you by BlueTuskr, a full-service digital marketing company specifically for e-commerce sellers looking to accelerate their growth. Go to BlueTuskr.com now for more information. Make sure to tune in next week for another amazing episode of the E-Comm Show.